It's Wednesday morning. It's late morning. I'm kind of having a slow day today. So I was catching up on some of the news in Israel and Gaza, and there was some stuff that really struck me. Yesterday, a hospital was bombed, and Israel is saying, we didn't do it. It was the Hamas that were shooting off a rocket, and it accidentally imploded, which seems like that's what the majority of people believe. Clearly, I don't know. I'm not there. But my husband and I were talking last night about free speech, and I'm going to say the end in the beginning before we really get into it. But I love free speech. I think free speech is one of the best parts about being an American. And I can tell you, I have personally learned this. Free speech also comes, free speech doesn't mean that there are no repercussions. So I've said something before on my blog and been annihilated for it. And you know what? That's also being an American, that people can choose. You say whatever you want. You're not going to go to prison. You're not going to get your tongue chopped out. You're not going to be shot or hanged like you would be in North Korea, right? But you might be ostracized or canceled is the word they talk about a lot of times. So last week, 30 groups on the campus of Harvard did a joint statement. And you might have already heard about this, so my apologies if this is something you're knowledgeable about. But I had 200 plus people in town this past weekend, and I am just a little behind, and this is important to me. I'm going to put up this link. So I'm going to read you the joint statement because I just think it's important. Okay, hang on. Joint statement by Harvard Palestine Solidarity Group on the situation in Palestine. We, the undersigned student organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. Today's events did not occur in a vacuum. For the last 2 decades, millions of Palestinians in Gaza have been forced to live in an open-air prison. So I think there's 2.5 million people living in Gaza, which is maybe 25 square miles or something. Israeli officials promised to open the gates of hell, and the massacres in Gaza have already commenced. Palestinians in Gaza have no shelters for refuge and no place to escape. In the coming days, Palestinians will be forced to bear the full brunt of Israel's violence. The apartheid Israeli violence has structured every aspect of Palestinian existence for 75 years, from systemized land seizure to routine airstrikes, arbitrary detentions to military checkpoints, and enforced family separations to targeted killings. Palestinians have been forced to live in a state of death, both slow and sudden. Today, the Palestinian ordeal enters into uncharted territory. The coming days will require a firm stand against colonial retaliation. We call on the Harvard community to take an action to stop the ongoing annihilation of Palestinians. The statement was co-authored by a coalition of Palestine solidarity groups at Harvard for student safety. The names of all organizations have been concealed at this time. Well, so basically what that says, somebody called me, that's why. I have a 9-year-old with autism home today from school. We tried to go to school, but we just couldn't make it. So we're home. So I knew I didn't need to answer because there's no emergency because he's here. What that means is that Israel is supposedly responsible for what happened a week ago Saturday, which was families getting up in the morning, just like my family was this morning. I was thinking, like, you get up, you make some coffee, you're starting the day, and militants, terrorists came into their house and started killing them, killing children, taking them captive. We know that there are over 100 hostages. And these students, so I think what you have here, you have free speech. And to me, they say that. Like, I don't think the university should crack down. I think the university could say, which they have now, but they waited a little while, which is curious. I think sometimes now people are so curious, or they really want to be politically correct. And they don't say anything because instead of going with their gut, they try to say what's going to make everybody happy. And I'm a lot of things, but I'm not that. So I will say something that is unpopular, and I don't care. Beheading babies. There's no evidence of that. So again, let's just stick to the truth. But this is curious. So yesterday, I read this article about this law firm called Davis Polk. And it says this. Top law firm Davis Polk announced in an internal email that it has rescinded letters of employment for 3 law students at Harvard University and Columbia who signed on to organizational statements regarding Israel. The decision is one of the latest responses to open letters from university groups in the Israel-Hamas conflict. I mean, I think that's sort of awesome. Well, I have not seen any evidence of beheading of babies, so I guess maybe that's why I say that. Would I be surprised? Probably not, but I have not personally seen any evidence about that. So these people had free speech to say whatever they want, and now there are repercussions for what they've said. There's evidence we haven't seen. Of course there is. And this law firm, Davis Polk, they have the freedom to decide that they're not going to hire these law students. And I hope the law students realize, yes, we have freedom of speech, but not freedom from repercussions. So the law firm says this: the views expressed in certain of the statements signed by law student organizations in recent days are in direct contravention of our firm's value system. For this reason, and to ensure we continue to maintain a supportive and inclusive work environments, the student leaders responsible for signing on to these statements are no longer welcome in our firm. Now, isn't that interesting? So, this surprise Hamas attack that killed at least 1,300 people, and then these 30 groups from Harvard sign on to this letter where they say Israel is entirely responsible for all unfolding violence in the conflict. And again, they can think that if they want to. But now, not only has Davis Polk signed on, CEOs, business leaders, even a federal judge, they said, oh golly. If you go to Twitter, it's just full of wonderful tweets. So you have this company called Sweetgreen. Their CEO, Jonathan Newman, said he would like to know which students signed the statement so I know never to hire these people. Same, said Easy Health CEO David Doel. FabFitFun CEO said discriminating against terrorist supporters is the most comically easy decision I'll ever have to make as a CEO. Ding, ding, ding. Judge Matthew Solemson, who's in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims, said he would not let any of the students who signed on to these statements clerk for him. Donors like Leslie Wexner, who's the, I think, former CEO of Victoria's Secret, cut ties with Harvard. They're like, I'm out. So now what you're seeing is 5 of the original, I think it was 34 signers, 5 of them have said, well, we're not going to sign that anymore. Amnesty International, Harvard College Act on a Dream, the Harvard Undergraduate Nepali Student Association, the Harvard Islamic Society, and Harvard Undergraduate Gungru. I've never even heard of these things. And it wasn't until October 10th that the president, Claudine Gay, came out with a statement and said that no student group, not even 34 student groups, speak for Harvard. But I think other people would point out, like, boy, it took her a while. And you might say, how does it apply to you? Why does it matter? Well, on Sunday, 3 days ago, a mother and her son were in their Illinois home, and a fella named Joseph Kuzba, 71, owned the home. He killed a 6-year-old Palestinian American boy, an American citizen who was also Palestinian, stabbed him 26 times. Plainfield, Illinois. Wounded his mother. This was just totally anti-Muslim hate crime. So you sign letters like that, and then there's some dodo bird out there that says, well, we're going to get him. Like, what? His mother was stabbed a dozen times. She survived. Detectives were able to determine that both victims in this brutal attack were targeted by the suspect due to them being Muslim and the ongoing Middle Eastern conflict involving Hamas and the Israelis. What a shame. What a freaking shame. There are atrocities on both sides. I think I don't think there's anybody out there that thinks people in Gaza deserve to be killed. We know that there are innocent people. Right? I mean, we know that. But I think there's also this thought of, if you allow a group who is in charge of a territory to come in your houses in the morning and rain just terror, that there is going to be a repercussion for that, and that innocent people will die. And I don't think you can blame Israel. And I know I'm not, some international scholar. I'm just a regular mom in a regular place. And you can't think that there's not going to be a problem. And yes, innocent people are going to be killed. I mean, I think the same thing happened after 9/11, and we were trying to find Osama bin Laden. Innocent people were killed. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. Our world is so off balance right now. It's like a pressure cooker. Well, I think we can stay on balance ourselves, and blaming Israel just doesn't make sense to me. So there was a mother on Sunday morning. Her name was Celine Ben David Nagar. She was getting ready for her first day at work. Was going to be Monday. She had been off on 6 months of maternity leave, 6 months. And she had set out on Saturday morning to go to the Nova Music Festival. Most of you have heard about that by now, in southern Israel. So they're on their way Saturday morning. Her husband says, go have a fun time before you start work back. 6-month-old baby. When they heard the rockets on their way to the Nova Music Festival, they turned around. They found a public bomb shelter, and at 7:11, she sent a message to her husband, Ido, and they have a daughter named Ellie. And she said, quote, soldiers are coming. God, it was a mistake to come here. Her husband sped south towards the site on Saturday, but the military wouldn't let him pass. On Sunday morning, he found her car with bullet holes, but as she had left it, she's now thought to be somewhere in Gaza. He found a survivor later that day who told him the Hamas militants had thrown grenades into the shelter, killing her friends, but she had survived. The only thing that her husband Ido knows is that her body has not been found. Now you tell me how she's responsible for what happened. Her husband said, you don't sleep, you don't eat, you are in a kind of crazed uncertainty. You are totally helpless. He's a French or Israeli citizen. She's an amazing woman, a person who is surrounded by friends and love. She is an amazing mother. We have a 6-month-old baby. This was supposed to be one last party to enjoy before she returned to work. She never came home. So of the hostages in Gaza, little is known about where they are, how they're doing. They were seized from towns all along the Israeli-Gaza border, which is pretty unusual to kidnap citizens. That's something that I don't think we would say. They also took people from military bases, including children, babies, elderly people, and people with disabilities. So I belong to a person with a disability. And this morning we got up and I took him to school. And before I could leave school, he came back down the hall to find me. He's just had a hard time. I was gone from him this weekend. I was working and I've been sleeping with him every night. And I said, you know what? Come on home with me. Come on home with me. And I can't imagine. There's so much he can't tell me. And we live in a safe, small town in North Carolina, an environment that is welcoming. And still, I don't know what he's thinking. And I cannot imagine having a little fella like him kidnapped alone in a tunnel in Gaza. You tell me how that's Israel's fault.
There's France.
France?
Yeah.
Are you watching your countries?
Yes.
What's your favorite country?
That's up close. There's Australia.
Australia?
Yes.
Where's Amos from? What country?
Wait a minute. There's United States.
That's your country. That's right. That's your country. Subscribers, more talk later on how I ended up with Amos at home today for all the special needs mothers or people whose lives aren't going to plan. I'm your person. Tune in. Thanks.